In the deep silence of the night, I observed someone sprawled atop my bunkmate. This individual was tightly pressed against my roommate, their body bent into a dramatic arc. Yet, my roommate slumbered deeply, apparently oblivious to the presence weighing down on her. Gradually, her head turned towards me at an agonizingly slow pace. I instinctively recoiled. My heart thudded wildly in my chest. Lu Xian's bed was situated diagonally across from mine. It was unmistakably clear that there was indeed someone lying next to her. The individual had lustrous, long black hair, clearly a girl. A mix of fear and bewilderment gripped me. Given that my roommate Lu Xian has a pronounced penchant for cleanliness, it was inconceivable to me that she would ever allow anyone to sleep in her bed. I still vividly recall how, a few days ago at the cafeteria, I accidentally dropped some sauce on her clothes. Upset, Lu Xian shunned me for days. But who was that lying next to Lu Xian? For a moment, I thought I was seeing things. I put on my glasses and carefully pulled back the bed curtain for another glance. This time, the girl was facing me, her face tilted upwards. In the shadowy room, her features were indistinct. Yet, inexplicably, her eyes stood out with unsettling clarity. Most unnerving of all, her eyes were open, staring blankly at the ceiling. Suddenly, her eyes shifted. More precisely, her gaze rolled ominously in my direction. She had seen me. In a panic, I retreated and enveloped myself in my blanket, my body quaking. You see, I'm usually too timid to even watch a horror film. At that moment, my fear reached its zenith. The other roommates slept on, their breathing steady and even. I counted only 3. Why just 3? I stared in confusion. Why was there no sound of breathing from the figure beside Lu Xian? Then, a familiar creak echoed through the silence. The beds in our dorm are ancient. They groan whenever someone rises. The sound originated directly across from me. It was clear someone had sat up. Cold sweat coated my forehead. It wasn't Lu Xian. If it had been, her screams would have already filled the air due to the unexpected company. It was the other person who had risen. Despite the warmth of the room, a chilling cold overtook me. Creak. At that moment, footsteps sounded on the stairs. That person was descending. My heart thudded uncontrollably, engulfed by unprecedented fear. Just then, my bed gave a slight shudder. Someone was climbing the stairs next to it. I was drenched in sweat. Creak. A series of eerie, scraping noises filled the air. Above, the old ceiling fan groaned with each rotation. A gust of wind fluttered a corner of the curtain at the foot of my bed. My pupils contracted in an instant. There, at the top of the ladder, stood a pair of ghastly white feet. Their toes aimed straight at me, the big toe unnaturally twisted outward. I shuddered in terror. The curtain dropped back into place, but the unmistakable outline of a person was visible through it. She crouched at the top of the ladder, her gaze fixed on me, unblinking. Suddenly, I heard my roommate, Huang Lan, disturbing her curtain. Huang Lan was in danger. Though not particularly close, I couldn't just stand by. Impulsively, I flung my curtain aside. Huang Lan was stepping onto the ladder. Our eyes met. Huang Lan flashed a smile. Too much bubble tea tonight, just off to the bathroom. The apparition at the stairwell simply dissolved. I managed a stiff smile in return. Then, my eyes drifted to the bed behind Huang Lan. In that moment, a deep chill enveloped me again. The quilt on Huang Lan's bed was oddly bulging, outlining the shape of a person. The figure was concealed under Huang Lan's quilt. My pajamas, soaked through with cold sweat, clung to my skin. Even though it was the peak of summer, making the dorm unbearably hot, a sudden chill gripped me. With a hoarse, shaky voice, I pointed toward Huang Lan's back. Noticing my distress, Huang Lan turned around, her expression one of bewilderment. Yet, she saw nothing. Her bedding smoothed out, as if the mysterious presence had simply evaporated. Stricken mute, I watched as Huang Lan climbed down to visit the restroom. Her usual fear meant she slightly cracked the door open for comfort during these nighttime excursions. From my perspective, I saw her squat down, I averted my eyes, respecting her privacy. However, at that instant, a piercing sense of unease overwhelmed me. I've always trusted my gut. It's never steered me wrong. Recalling childhood, mere minutes before a devastating explosion tore through our kitchen, I had inexplicably burst into tears in the living room. My mother had scooped me up just in time to avoid the disaster. I was sure I had glimpsed something alarming just now. Shivering, I turned back around. In that moment, my eyes met Huang Lan's. Her eyes were unnaturally wide, the corners sharply upturned. This exaggeration revealed too much white, shrinking her pupils to tiny dots. Huang Lan's gaze was fixed on me. It was then I grasped the source of my unease. The big toe on Huang Lan's slippered foot was grotesquely twisted outwards, as if violently broken. Her mouth slowly, chillingly curled into a smile. "You saw it, huh?" Terror seized my throat, my eyes stinging with fear. I turned again, shivering. The Huang Lan in the opposite bed was deeply asleep, her leg absently kicking off her covers. The figure in the bathroom couldn't have been Huang Lan. But as I turned to look at the restroom, the imposter had disappeared. My heart threatened to leap from my chest. Something icy brushed against my back. Cold sweat streamed down my forehead. My teeth chattered uncontrollably from the intense cold. In my peripheral vision, I spotted a ghostly pale hand on my shoulder, its nails painted a startling crimson. In the darkness, it held a sinister yet oddly mesmerizing allure. Terror coursed through me, causing my body to shudder uncontrollably. I didn't dare turn around, because I could all too well imagine what awaited me there. That person was now right behind me. Her body was pressed tightly against mine, her coldness shocking, like pressing against an ice block. But quickly, the chill dissipated. I breathed out a deep sigh of relief, feeling as though the presence behind me had evaporated. I've never believed in ghosts. Yet, tonight's events had me questioning, wondering if perhaps there are inexplicable forces at play in our world. Just as I settled back to lie down, something sharp poked me from beneath. Feeling around, I found a dark red button. This button looked aged, its paint chipped and faded. Strangely, the button seemed familiar, though I couldn't place where I'd seen it. The sudden appearance gave me an uneasy feeling. Frowning, I threw the button away. Yet, for a full minute, there was no sound of it hitting the ground. Under normal circumstances, even the smallest button would make a distinct sound when it fell, especially in the silence of the night. But there was nothing. It was as if someone had caught the button with their hand from below. This thought sent another shiver of fear through me. Suddenly, the curtains of my bed were slowly drawn apart from the middle. A disturbingly pale hand perched on the bed's railing. The fingernails were jagged and broken. The thumbnail was cracked, with traces of dried, dark red blood. I bit down on my lip and edged back towards the wall. Pressed against the corner, I was trapped. The hand twisted in a way that was not natural. It flipped from front to back with a gruesome twist. I heard the sound of bones breaking. It held a dark red button in its palm. The button drifted gently onto my bed. The hand withdrew slowly. I caught my breath, my lips quivering. I gingerly picked up the button, no longer willing to throw it away recklessly. I felt an anomaly on the button. I switched on my phone's flashlight for a better look. 2 tiny characters were engraved on the button, almost imperceptible. Without my sharp instincts, I would never have noticed these ant-sized letters. I squinted to read them. Suddenly, my hand trembled, and the button fell from my grasp. Etched onto the button were 2 foreboding words. Leave. What did they signify? Leave what place? Was it a directive to vacate this dormitory? I was at a loss. At that moment, I detected Lu Exine shifting in her sleep. Warily, I pressed my eye to a small opening in the curtain, and my heart chilled. The quilt draped over Lu Exine formed an eerie, person-like contour. Abruptly, a pallid hand emerged slowly from under the quilt. Fear racked my body, causing it to shake uncontrollably. Lu Exine remained in a deep slumber, utterly unaware of the intruder under her covers. Then, black hair appeared. The hair was long, and it leisurely crept out from the quilt, draping over Lu Xian's face. My heart thudded wildly, and my lips shook without ceasing. The girl seemed aware of my gaze. She turned, her movement slow and unnatural. But rather than turning to the side, her head eerily rolled backward, hanging upside down. The grisly sound of bones grinding filled my ears. I locked eyes with her. She stared back, unblinking. In the shadowy darkness, her lips curled into a faint smile, and a piercing, thin laugh sliced through the silence. Suddenly, an overwhelming drowsiness overtook me. Then all went dark. When I woke, it was already 7 a.m. The sound of water from the bathroom had roused me. Lu Xian was inside, freshening up. My temples pounded. Had everything last night been merely a dream? But then, my hand brushed against something that shattered that thought. A hard, dark red button. The harrowing experiences of last night were not illusions. They were undeniably real. Xiao Tian, hurry up. Didn't you remember? We have an early class at 8. It's a joint session with 2 departments. We should look our best. Who knows? Maybe there will be some cute guys from the law department. Huang Lan bubbled with excitement. I murmured a vague response. The class was scheduled in the large auditorium. Linking arms with Huang Lan and Lu Xian, we made our way into the academic building. The presence of so many people lightened the shadows in my heart. Students swirled around us, and suddenly, a girl collided with me, knocking me to the ground. She bowed her head, muttered a few apologies, and quickly moved on. Huang Lan helped me to my feet. Are you all right? I nodded, my eyes lingering on the retreating figure of the girl. A strange sense of familiarity creeping up on me. She seemed just like the person from last night's eerie encounter in the dorm. Suddenly, I felt something extra in my pocket. I pulled out a note. Scrawled in red were 4 chilling words. Leave this place. My heart began to race. What are you staring at? We need to move. Huang Lan and Lu Xian called from ahead. A vague apprehension settled over me. The farther we walked, the colder I felt. It was a deep, shaking cold. Was this corridor always this long? A disconcerting feeling of wrongness enveloped me, yet I couldn't quite place what was off. Huang Lan and Lu Xian moved briskly ahead, continually urging me on. Bai Tian, why are you moving so slowly? Class is about to start. Their impatience was evident. I halted abruptly. Then it clicked. It was the silence. The usual din of the corridor, the babble of students, had vanished at some point. Now, the entire academic building was eerily quiet. The silence was so profound I could hear my heartbeat pounding. Bai Tian, let's go. The modern literature teacher is strict about attendance, and you're campaigning for party membership this semester, right? We can't have a late mark, Lu Xian urged relentlessly. Everything appeared completely normal, except for the absence of any sound. Even the usual chirping from outside had ceased at that moment. I stood frozen, watching my 2 roommates, my skin crawling with goosebumps. Why were they tiptoeing? Arm in arm, both poised on their toes, they continued to press me to hurry. Behind them, darkness enveloped everything, with not even a sliver of light penetrating. Only one classroom glowed with a dim light. I recoiled, stepping backward. I distinctly remembered there was no classroom there. At that moment, a girl's whisper suddenly filled my ear. Leave. My eyes snapped open. At the front of the classroom, the teacher was detailing a slide. Huang Lan whispered closely. What happened? You fell asleep. If I hadn't nudged you, you'd probably have been called out. How did I even get into this classroom? In that moment, confusion reigned in my mind. Please turn to page 58, the teacher instructed. Today, we'll delve into the developmental patterns of modern Chinese literature. I opened my textbook, only to be greeted by a startling sight. Leave, leave, leave this place. The page was filled with these 2 words repeated over and over. Instinctively, I covered the words with my hand. Then, abruptly, all noise in the classroom ceased. My roommates were staring straight ahead, ostensibly focused on the lecture. However, their eyes suddenly darted to the far edge, intensely fixed on me, more specifically on the textbook shielded by my hand. The teacher at the front seemed to freeze, mid-gesture with his chalk in hand. Next, everyone seated ahead began slowly turning their heads towards me. Their movements were not normal. Their heads unnaturally twisted backward. What normal person could turn their head in such a way? Their heads hung grotesquely behind their shoulders. I could hear the grating sound of bones being pushed to their limits. At that moment, there was only one clear thought in my mind: leave this classroom. As I attempted to rise, my hand was abruptly seized. It was Huang Lan, my roommate, leaning in close with her eyes disturbingly wide. Xiao Tian, what's written in the book? At that moment, my fear reached its zenith. Despite Huang Lan's typically frail demeanor, her grip was unervingly strong. Are you keeping secrets from us? She pressed, her eyes fixed intensely on mine. Given my naturally timid nature, tears had already begun streaming down my face. With a voice near breaking, I cried out to Huang Lan, "Let go of me!" Instantly, the floor seemed to tremble. The entire classroom spun around me. Dizziness gripped me, my vision blurring until it faded entirely. Just before darkness fully enveloped me, I heard odd, varied sounds, like many footsteps. When I next opened my eyes, I was engulfed in the scent of disinfectant. Lu Xian and Huang Lan were at my side, their faces etched with worry. What happened? Did you pass out from low blood sugar in class because of your dieting? You were continuously mumbling, "Let me go." Huang Lan fretted, holding my hand and chattering protectively. Their expressions were normal, filled with their usual concern for me. My head spun, a profound weakness pervading my body. Could it really be that I fainted from low blood sugar? I struggled to rise from the bed. At that moment, a sound akin to an airplane's roar filled the air. Did any of you hear that? An airplane? I inquired, my brow furrowed in confusion. Lu Xian and Huang Lan both shook their heads. No airplanes here in our quiet little town, they responded. Lu Xian reached into his backpack and offered some candies. Xiao Tian, try these. It might help with your sugar levels, he suggested. I took the candies, the enticing packaging momentarily catching my eye, yet a strong aversion welled up inside me. Eat up, Lu Xian urged, his eyes intently on me, a smirk playing on his lips. I'd rather not. I'm not feeling up to it, I said, handing back the candies. Lu Xian's lips tightened into a thin line, his gaze lingering on me, expression unreadable. In that instant, I detected a fleeting malice in her gaze. A stark realization struck me. I had to escape. I brushed aside my roommate's attempts to detain me and fled the infirmary. The hallway was cloaked in an eerie silence. From its shadowy depths, a dark red button rolled forth, came to a stop at my feet. With a furrowed brow, I stooped to retrieve it. However, another hand reached it first, seizing the button swiftly. I fixated on the hand hanging before my eyes. Its skin was deathly pale without a hint of color, and the nails were jagged, painted a vivid crimson. A cold sweat trickled down my forehead. When I abruptly raised my head, the space before me was empty. A button clattered to the ground, its sound sharp and clear. Inspecting it closely, I discovered a line of tiny text, "Reflux." I mulled over it, but its meaning eluded me. Suddenly, my roommate's voice echoed from behind. "Xiao Tian, you're still frail. Why wander about?" Turning around, I was met by my roommates' faces, etched with concern. "Bai Tian, what spurred such haste?" Their voices were laden with worry, yet something seemed off about them. As they approached, the anomaly became clear. Their necks were unnaturally long, much longer than normal. Their heads then abruptly sagged, as if bereft of support. Overcome with terror, I let out a scream and darted forward. Upon reaching the teaching building's main entrance, I found the doors securely locked. In that instant, despair enveloped me completely. I kept pounding on the door, but it steadfastly refused to open. The main doors of the teaching building are never locked during daylight. What on earth is happening? Abruptly, I looked up into the sky. It was a somber, oppressive darkness. When had daylight last graced us? Bai Tian, stop running. The voices of my roommates echoed closer behind me. I turned to find them with heads bowed and grotesque smiles plastered on their faces. Driven by panic, I dashed into the bathroom. I darted into the last stall, locking the door swiftly. Perched atop the toilet, I wrapped my arms around myself, clenching my teeth to mute any whimpers of fear. Footsteps echoed outside. Xiao Tian, what's wrong? Why are you avoiding us? We're really worried about you, my roommates called through the door. I held my breath, silent. Creak. The sound of scraping echoed as they pushed open the first stall. Tension gripped me. My nails were buried in my palms. Xiao Tian isn't here, said Huang Lan, her voice tinged with disappointment. I didn't see her run in here. Maybe she went elsewhere. Let's keep searching, Lu Xian proposed. Relief washed over me as Lu Xian's words floated through the air. Their footsteps gradually faded into silence. Yet, I remained inside, too afraid to step out. As my body began to unwind, I suddenly felt the chilling weight of two gazes upon me. Startled, I looked up. Lu Xian and Huang Lan were peering down from above the door, their heads dangling, their eyes unnaturally wide as they stared intently at me. My vision then abruptly went dark once more. When I next opened my eyes, the clock showed 9 p.m. I was in my bed in the dormitory. Beneath my bed, I heard my roommates whispering. Bai Tian's condition seems to be deteriorating. What should we do? Should we call the counselor? I'm truly frightened by what's happening, and I'm worried about her. She's fainted several times, and each time she wakes and sees us, she flees. The doors to the teaching building were open, yet she was screaming as though she couldn't see them. We tried to get her back to the dorm, but she ran into the bathroom as if terrified by ghosts, and then she collapsed there. Their worried voices struck me like a heavy blow. Abruptly, I threw back the bed curtain, demanding, "What are you talking about?" Taken aback by my sudden movement, Lu Xian and Huang Lan exchanged worried glances. After a tense pause, Huang Lan carefully began, "Xiao Tian, when you first came to the dorm, you told us you were battling a strange illness. You experience intermittent memory loss and brief hallucinations. Initially, these incidents were sporadic when you joined us in the dorm, but they've become markedly more frequent in recent days," they explained. My mind seemed to stall. I had no prior knowledge of such a condition. Yet, the explanation provided by Huang Lan and Lu Xian appeared to be the most reasonable under the circumstances. I examined them intently. Their necks were normal, their posture unremarkable. I also checked my pockets. Absent were the button and the note that had been slipped to me. "Xiao Tian, we're not shunning you. I understand your pain, and we are here to support you," Huang Lan said with a soft gaze. I was somewhat convinced by their sincerity. I nodded and managed a faint smile. A profound drowsiness overwhelmed me once more. It was the height of summer, and although the dormitory's ceiling fan creaked in its continuous motion, a peculiar chill pervaded the air. Felt like a cold seeping right through to my bones. "I think I'll sleep now," I murmured, drifting off. My sleep was uneasy, punctuated by the persistent call of a girl's voice. "Bai Tian, wake up. You mustn't continue sleeping. Time is unwinding. Your life, too, is receding. Little time remains." My eyes snapped open. It was chillingly cold. This should have been the peak of the sweltering summer. Yet when I exhaled, a mist formed. Drip. A droplet of water landed on my forehead. Drops steadily began to fall from the top of the bed curtain. I was filled with dread. Suddenly, I sensed the blanket shift slightly, as if someone at the end had gently tugged at it. My blanket began to inch downward. My gaze was fixed on the corner of the bed. The sheets there dipped deeply, forming a stark contrast to the flat surrounding sheets. It seemed as if someone was crouched there. A shiver ran through me. Taking a deep breath, I trembled and tossed the blanket. It didn't land flat. Rather, it draped over a shape, forming a curve as though it covered someone. Fear clenched my chest painfully. A suffocating sensation engulfed me. Beneath the blanket, slender, pale ankles appeared. A dark red button rolled out from under the blanket. Shaking, I picked it up. Engraved on it was a line of tiny text. "Do not trust them." In the next instant, the blanket settled back onto the bedsheet. The girl had vanished. Disturbed, I picked up my phone. It was 11 at night. As I was about to set the phone down, a sharp throb pulsed through my forehead. I stared in disbelief at the time displayed on the phone. February 22nd, 11 o'clock at night. Yet, just last night, my phone had clearly shown February 23rd. I rarely keep track of the date. Only now did I realize that time was, indeed, flowing backward. Ignored details began to coalesce in my mind. The word reflux inscribed on the button, and the voice of the girl I had heard in my sleep. It appeared she wasn't trying to harm me but was persistently warning me. Time was reversing. And what exactly did she mean by my life reversing? I heard the hushed voices of my roommates. "She still seems wary of us. We've already hidden all those items. Those damn buttons, notes, and textbooks." A heaviness settled in my chest. These weren't hallucinations after all. What if Xiao Tian now? Huang Lan's voice abruptly halted. My heart skipped a beat. The room fell ominously silent. Gently, with utmost caution, I lifted the curtain around my bed. There, Lu Exan and Huang Lan were crouched, their faces grotesquely contorted as they stared at me, their eyes nearly tearing at the seams. Xiao Tian really is spying on us. At that moment, an unexpected wave of bravery surged through me. I pushed past my two roommates and fled from the room. The hallway was dimly lit, with only the flickering incandescent lights casting eerie shadows. Teeth clenched, I sprinted forward desperately. Each dorm room door around me loomed like a monster lurking in the dark. "Xiao Tian, if you don't stop running, we'll be truly upset." The sound of my roommate reverberated from behind me. Turning around, I saw them tiptoeing, their heads lowered, advancing towards me with unhurried steps. Then, suddenly, a nearby door creaked open. The face of a familiar girl peered out from behind it, delicate and recognizable from previous visits to our dorm. "Quick, get in here, it's dangerous," she urged with urgency. As my roommates edged closer, I was about to rush inside when my steps abruptly froze. Thank goodness for my sixth sense. "Hurry, Xiao Tian," she implored, noticing my hesitation. I stared intently at her, retreating a few steps. "All our dorm doors are designed to be pulled open from the inside, so why did you open it from the side?" The girl gazed at me without expression. Then suddenly, her face contorted into an exaggerated grin. Realizing the danger, I sprinted desperately downstairs. No matter how swiftly I ran, my two roommates trailed behind with unsettling ease. Though they seemed to amble, they inexorably narrowed the gap. Their eyes grew increasingly malevolent, almost palpable in their hatred. Exhausted, the short staircase felt interminably long. Suddenly, my foot caught on something. I crashed to the floor. It was my roommate's hand that ensnared me. She clung to my ankle, her eyes intensely fixated on me. In our dorm, 3 means 3, none less. There's no escape for you. In that critical moment, a strong hand pulled me to my feet. The girl I had seen earlier was now dragging me forward, but her progress was labored. Her foot was grotesquely twisted, and she limped heavily as she hauled me onwards. At last, we reached the dormitory's entrance. Above, the sky was as dark as if ink had spilled across it. I remembered correctly. This sky had never brightened. The girl paused, turning to face me. In that instant, I truly saw her face. A delicate, familiar visage. "Bai Tian, you must survive," she implored. Her smile was gentle, a stark contrast to the grim surroundings. It didn't strike me as sinister but rather as comforting. From her pocket, she produced a button and handed it to me. "My deepest wish is for you to remember me. I am Xiao Zhu." The button in my hand was stained with a dark red tinge of blood. As I was about to speak to her, I noticed my roommates looming behind us. With a forceful push, Xiao Zhu sent me forward. The last thing I was aware of was the smile on Xiao Zhu's face as I felt the wetness on my cheeks. Like rain. There's another one here, alive, a living person, an excited voice exclaimed. Thirst overwhelmed me. Pain coursed through my body, and a crushing weight oppressed me. It was unbearable. With great effort, I opened my eyes to see many faces. They were clearing the stones from atop me. Gently, I was lifted by caring hands. Around me, the landscape was a grim tableau of collapsed buildings, with many unrecognizable bodies strewn across the ground. Two of them were my roommates, their necks grotesquely twisted, their gazes fixed in my direction. I was hurriedly taken to a hospital, where a crowd had gathered. My parents, grasping my hands, wept inconsolably. I longed to comfort them, but my throat throbbed painfully. The doctor told me I was extraordinarily fortunate. A week prior, a devastating landslide had struck my county, and my school was directly at the mountain's base. Every student and teacher had been buried beneath the rubble, with me as the sole survivor. After a lengthy silence, I rasped, "Dad, Mom, do you know who Xiaozhu is?" My mother's hand trembled as she held mine, and she revealed a forgotten truth. Xiaozhu was a child from our neighborhood, fatherless, her mother a bar worker. I first encountered Xiaozhu at a local pancake stall, a place where the simple delights of afternoon pancakes became our cherished ritual. That day, she had been hidden in a nearby corner, her eyes covetously fixed on the pancake in my grasp. Her gaze lingered on the pancake, her throat subtly shifting as she watched. "Do you want some?" I split the pancake in half and handed one piece to her. Xiaozhu paused, her hunger evident, then eagerly accepted it and began eating heartily. "One day, I'll pay you back," she promised, looking up at me with a grave expression. That was the beginning of our deep friendship. Her mother, though strikingly beautiful, paid little attention to Xiaozhu. Noting that Xiaozhu was much thinner than other kids her age, my mother made a point of having her join us for meals regularly. Together, we navigated life, sharing everything from school desks in middle school to university admission letters. The day we received our university acceptances, we held each other and cried tears of joy. I thought we'd always stick together, but the summer after our final year of high school changed everything. Flush with the excitement of having completed our college entrance exams, we eagerly planned a getaway to a nearby coastal town. Our parents were reluctant to let us go alone but eventually gave in to our persistent entreaties. That journey, however, turned dark. That day, as Xiaozhu and I sought to catch the sunrise at the beach, the shore at 5 in the morning offered solitude. Unfortunately, the sunrise was overshadowed by the arrival of 3 menacing men, who appeared to be in their 20s and stared at us ominously. I immediately recognized the danger and seized Xiaozhu's hand, rushing toward the guest house where we were staying. But our pursuers caught up to us quickly. I was the first to be seized. One man pinned me down with his foot, while 2 others yanked at my hair. Xiaozhu tried desperately to save me, but her slender build was no match for the 3 men. With every ounce of her strength, she managed to divert their attention. At last, the man holding me down released his grip to go after Xiaozhu. "Bai Tian, run!" Underneath them, Xiaozhu screamed desperately at me. Tears clouded my vision, but I knew I had to escape and call for help to rescue Xiaozhu. Gritting my teeth, I sprinted forward. Adjacent to the beach was a coastal highway. Car approached in the distance. It seemed like a lifeline, and I dashed towards it with all the hope I could muster. However, the next moment brought a harrowing impact and pain that plunged me into darkness. When I awoke, I found myself in a hospital. The doctor told me I had been in a coma for half a month. It was miraculous that I had awakened. The car that had struck me was driven by someone who had been driving all night and was drunk, utterly incoherent. A severe head injury had wiped my memory clean of Xiaozhu. I forgot the girl who had been my companion since childhood, and I forgot to alert the police. Concerned about the impact the truth might have on me, my parents kept Xiaozhu's fate from me and quietly notified the authorities. When the police found Xiaozhu, her body was concealed in a cement tank on the beach. My mother revealed that Xiaozhu had endured half a month of torture before she died from her injuries. Overwhelmed with grief, Tears rolled down my cheeks as I compulsively searched for news about Xiao Zhu. Her legs and arms were completely fractured. Her big toe had been cruelly snapped off. This was why she appeared so broken. But Xiao Zhu had survived 15 torturous days. Had she been waiting for me, hoping I'd come back to rescue her? A piece of news shattered my composure, and I sobbed uncontrollably. It reported that Xiao Zhu had clutched a dark red button in her hand throughout her ordeal. That button, a childhood gift from me, symbolized our promise. Xiao Zhu, we were supposed to be together forever. Xiao Zhu side story. Today is the 7th day of my hellish captivity by those monsters. They seared my skin with a lighter and pierced my chest with needles. The pain is beyond words. It's torture. I long for death, but I must persevere. Xiao Tian vowed to come for me. Day 10. Xiao Tian, I'm barely holding on. Today they shaved all my hair. It hurts more than the torture because I recall how much you cherished my long hair. Despite my pleas, those fiends sheared it all off. They branded the word whore across my scalp. Xiao Tian, where are you? I miss you terribly. Day 15. My wounds have rotted and are seeping pus. The stench of decay is overpowering. Even those brutes find me repulsive. I overhear their plans for disposing of me. I doubt I'll last until Xiao Tian arrives. I continually look at the button in my hand. It brings back memories of the young Xiao Tian. She picked out this button for me herself. It's merely a button, yet it's my most valued treasure. But those brutes stole it. I unleashed the last of my energy, biting one of them frantically. Suddenly, a heavy object crashed onto my head. As I fell, I clutched at the button with all my remaining strength. I died. Without a trace of emotion, I floated, watching those brutes as they managed my body. Before me appeared a young man, his attire as dark as the night. With an icy demeanor, he explained that in recognition of my virtuous deeds and considerable suffering in life, he was prepared to offer me a rare boon, one wish. My options were clear: vengeance or a future birth into opulence and honor. Could you tell me if Bai Tian's life has been one of peace? I queried. He scowled, presuming a grudge against Xiao Tian. Yet he was mistaken. I harbored no ill will toward Xiao Tian. My heart simply ached with her absence. He disclosed that Xiao Tian would meet her end in a landslide in a year's time. That is the destiny assigned to her, he remarked with detachment. Then, might I exchange my wish for her life to be one of tranquility and success? I proposed impulsively. He froze, taken aback. You are out of your mind. Altering someone's fate could shatter your soul, eliminating any chance of reincarnation. Your own life has been fraught with hardship. You could enhance your next existence. I looked him squarely in the eyes, resolute. I don't care. He paused, then said slowly, You are truly mad. Proceed with your attempt to save her, but be mindful. Your power is finite, and whether you can succeed remains uncertain. For Xiao Tian, I would willingly traverse 1,000 lifetimes. Firefighter side story. I served as a firefighter in the rescue efforts following the catastrophic landslide. During the operation, we stumbled upon an exceedingly peculiar situation, which we were strictly instructed to keep under wraps. Upon discovering Bai Tian, the lone survivor, we encountered 2 deceased individuals whose hands were tightly gripping her feet. In the grasp of one, we found several stones. These individuals were identified as Bai Tian's roommates, who, it was rumored, had frequently bullied and oppressed her. However, the truly surreal part was the fragmented skeleton we found entwined with Bai Tian, its posture mimicking an embrace. This skeleton was swiftly removed, and the subsequent details came to me through official channels. Remarkably, this skeleton was linked to the notorious Beach Girl concrete case from the previous year, a case that had culminated in the execution of all 3 involved. A couple, presenting themselves as the parents of the girl's friend, had interred her remains. Yet now, her skeleton had eerily resurfaced at the accident site. The leader lit a cigarette and regarded me with an enigmatic gaze. Do you believe in ghosts? My silence stretched on. I don't believe in ghosts, but this skeleton, it had miraculously shielded Bai Tian from tumbling rocks. Do ghosts walk among us? No. But I am a believer in love that endures beyond the grave. By Tion's side story. I placed a fresh bouquet on Shouju's tombstone. Shouju, I'm here to see you, I whispered, smiling gently. A light yellow butterfly, as if summoned by my words, danced over and settled next to my hand.